is October 8, 1992, and I'm in the Pentecostal Research Center on the campuses of Lee College and the Church of God School of Theology. I'm very pleased to have as my guest today two friends of quite a few years that I admire very deeply, Reverend Harold Spellman and his wife Marion, who are leaders of the Peniel Ministries in Pennsylvania. And I'm very glad that you are in Cleveland and are able to come by and have this visit. What are you here for, by the way?
Well, Dr. Conn, I'm here because of the Ladies Board. I'm a member presently serving on the International Ladies Board, and we had a board meeting, and so I'm here for that. And I had the great privilege this morning to speak at the School of Theology, where President Knight is now presiding, and I had a great opportunity to speak there this morning, and I'm all fired up and I'm ready.
I'm glad.
And I'm just kind of tagging along. I'm her chauffeur and bodyguard. And,
I know that role. I've had to run that role sometimes,
yes.
Isn't it, too? Well, it is so nice of you to come by and to visit with us so that we can have some understanding of the work that you're doing in the Peniel Ministries. Where do you come from? I know you're in Pennsylvania now, but what is your background, Harold?
I was born in Bamberg, South Carolina, moved to York, Pennsylvania when I was 13 years old, went to high school there, graduated, and lived in Pennsylvania for most of my life. And as a matter of fact, that's where I met Marion. And we met, and she had started Peniel Ministries already about 3 months. And
you met her after?
I met her after Peniel had gotten off the ground. And we had started dating, and God spoke to our hearts and told us that we were to be married.
Oh.
And we were married there, and been together ever since, and we combine our forces.
Now when are we talking about? What year
this
did you
was
marry?
1981.
In 1981?
And we've been married, and our marriage relationship is almost as old as our working relationship.
I can understand that. Well, are you a native of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, and I went to school there, and for years, though, I had worked in rehabilitation. I worked with the Teen Challenge Ministries. I also worked in the prisons there.
Not is this in Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania. I didn't actually work in the prisons, but we had a chaplaincy program going in the Allegheny County prisons, and there I served for several years, and God did a miraculous thing to call me into this kind of work, because I have personally never had a drug problem, or I've never been involved with drugs or alcohol or any of those things, although the Lord saved me. He saved me from a lot, but it was not drugs or alcohol or that type of a lifestyle. But working in the jails and in the prisons as a chaplain, the Lord gave us an abundance. There was just an outpouring of God's blessings there, so much so till I felt that God was anointing me in this area. We were involved in the prisons when the prisons were just terribly overcrowded, and the girls were fighting. We worked with the female inmates. The girls were fighting, and tensions were high, stress level was unbelievable, and God allowed me and my girlfriend, Arlene Bates, to go into the prisons, and God gave us, I know it was the Lord, He gave us what we needed, and we were able, through the ministry, to just bring a peace in that prison, and they began to work together. We gave them projects, and where there was chaos and confusion and fighting and actually stabbings and violence in the prisons, God gave us peace there. And I felt the anointing of the Lord there on my life. That's when I really felt God's anointing.
What year are we talking about when you were active like that?
This was several years prior to, this must have been 70,
early 70s.
Early 70s. I'm not sure exactly what year it was, but it was the early 70s, because I had actually worked there for several years, and then I you know, I gave that up,
But you were a single young lady.
Yeah, well, I was working in the prisons, and God was helping us to.
That's unusual.
But God was really helping us to touch. We just had such a burden for the girls who were being just recycled, constantly recycled through the prisons, and I guess I got a little frustrated there as well, because we were bringing them to our church.
Now, what church were you in?
That was the Church of God.
You were already in the Church
I was already in the Church of God, and we were bringing the girls, Arlene Bates and myself were bringing the girls to the church, and our church did not know quite how to handle those girls, because they were coming in and they were not exactly what we wanted in the church, and they were different. They were different, they looked different, they talked differently, they smelled differently. They were just different, and so our congregation could not adjust to those girls, and so that was frustrating for me. That was very, very frustrating, because I did not know quite what to do with the girls. We were preaching Christ, we were telling them that God loved them, but there was no place to take them. And when we brought them there, people were they were actually moving their families away from them. You know, they'd sit down, they would actually move around in the church.
Now, was this a church-sponsored outreach that you were doing, or endeavor?
No.
Or was it state?
No, this was something that I was just doing.
Private?
I was doing it. I had gotten the blessings of our pastor, E.D. Cobbs. He is now with the Lord, but he told Arlene and myself, don't even worry about what's happening. God has called you, and you have my blessings to do it.
Let me understand. You're saying that you and Arlene, on your own, out of a burden of your heart,
Yes.
began this
Prison
effort
ministry.
to reach
Yes.
the ministry.
Yes.
I mean, the inmates of
Yes,
a prison.
yes.
Ladies, altogether ladies.
Well, yes, ladies. We dealt with ladies. At that time, we only dealt with ladies, because I personally felt comfortable dealing with the ladies, and they're the hardest, incidentally, to work with. But I think, that's my opinion, but we felt, and because it was so controversial, we absolutely did not want to get involved with any of the male prisoners. So we were already like sort of, you know, we weren't that accepted anyway. We were like sort of rebels there anyway. So to get involved with male prisoners was totally out to lunch.
Well, let me put in a little disclaimer here. I am a Southern male, you understand?
Yes, sir.
And you speak of females as ladies,
Yes.
and you're not passing any judgment on whether their lifestyle or what character they had. You're speaking of a female.
I'm speaking strictly from a female point of view.
Yes, I understand that. I want you to understand that I'm not passing any judgment.
That's
calling
right.
they were
That's
the
right.
ladies.
Well, I'm just simply saying that I felt, because it was so new in our church and in our area, that the best thing to do was to deal with ladies, so there wouldn't be any misunderstanding that we were really there to minister, so that there wouldn't be any other misunderstandings. So we ministered to the ladies, and God really gave us, He gave us a real outpouring there.
Well, now, Harold, you came from South Carolina. You had moved into the north. Were you Church of God also?
No. I had grown up being exposed to the Baptist church. Never got saved, and in my high school years, I became very rebellious. Eventually, drifted into drugs, and at the age of 30 was when I met the Lord in 1979. And I went into a non-denominational church in York, Pennsylvania, and gave my heart to the Lord, and was exposed to the Teens Challenge ministry, which is very similar to Peniel, what we do now, and was discipled there as a Christian, and was delivered miraculously at the altar of a drug and alcohol problem of 16 and a half years. And God,
16 and a half?
16 and a half years of substance abuse, heroin and cocaine.
You mean hard
drugs, heroin and cocaine, and marijuana, any kind of pills you can imagine, alcohol, the whole business. And the Lord just touched me, Dr. Conn, and it was as if though I never did it. He literally just went in and pulled out all desire to do it. And I immediately...
well, what about effects? Has he delivered you from any effects, any after?
No effects. I had no
That's wonderful.
after effects whatsoever.
No flashback type?
No
thing?
flashbacks. It was as if it never happened.
Well, praise
And
God.
during the years that since, I've never had any type of desire whatsoever.
Well, praise
That's
God.
why I'm a firm believer in the type work that we do at
That
Peniel
you- yeah.
Ministries now. And the Lord blessed me and gave me a family with my wife, allowed me to complete my, to continue my education, allowed me to receive a master's degree in human services.
Really?
Became a minister of the Church of God, and put me in a position now to pursue even a doctorate degree in humanities.
Oh.
So the Lord has done a lot for me during the years that I've been
You are
working
a
with Him.
walking miracle. You are truly a walking
I say amen to that loud and clear,
Oh,
absolutely,
yes.
without a doubt. I know that God is able to deliver,
Oh.
and it's much easier for me to sit down with someone who is in bondage to drug
And you know how to
drug addiction,
communicate with
alcoholism,
them, yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
I
can
couldn't.
communicate with them by sharing
Yes.
some of what I'm sharing here with you today. The one thing that the world is suffering from now is the fact that there is no hope, and that is the one thing I believe, whether you have a drug and alcohol background, abusive background or not. If you have an experience, as Marion had mentioned, who never had any problem with drugs and or alcohol, but yet God saved her. And if you can lead a person to Christ and you can tell them what happened to you, Paul said that I've comforted you, and you need to go out and comfort others with the same measure that you yourself were comforted. And that is the hope that we have to offer the world, that there is a way out.
We feel that the Lord has really made a good team out of us.
Oh, you're
because
ideal. Pardon me, but you are ideal.
well, in that sometimes we deal with the husband or the wife who has abused drugs, and then the other mate has not. And so many times they think if they haven't abused the drugs, they don't need God. He has the problem or she has the problem. So what we do, we deal with the whole family. And so when a man comes into the program, and I know we're going to talk about this a little later, I just want to share this with you. When a man or a woman comes into the program, and say there is one person who is abusing drugs or alcohol or having that type of a social problem, we feel that we have something to offer for that other person who is not abusing. My husband may deal with him, or her staff member may deal with them who has had a drug background. But then we say to that other person who says, well, I don't have a problem, we say, but you do. If you don't have the Lord, whether you know, whether you've ever dealt with drugs or you've never abused them, I often say, and I really believe this, that sometimes when there's problems in a marriage, the person who is the most visible, most of the times we deal with that issue first. For instance, if there's wife beating, for instance, or spousal abuse, my husband often will say to the couple, if we do marital counseling, he'll say, keep your hands in your pocket. You stop hitting her, and then because he'll say, well, she's doing this too. But we say, but you're so visible, so you need to stop doing what you're doing so we can get to the whole problem, because we're going to have to deal with this problem because it's most serious. You can kill her or something like that. So what we're saying is we feel that this team that the Lord has put together is saying that we can deal with a family that is dysfunctional in terms because of drug addiction or drug abuse, and we can deal with the whole family. We can deal with those who have the problem and those who do not, and we believe that absolutely that Christ is the answer for that family, so that when my husband deals with a drug, or our staff, or even I deal with a person who's using drugs, we also have something to give that person who feels like, well, if I could just get him off drugs, everything will be all right. And we're saying, yes, that's a start. But also we want to tell you how to bring this family together, and you need to be walking in the same way, which is Christ. And so you need Christ as well. Even though you've never used drugs, you need Christ as well. And I am the example for that. I've never used drugs, but I need Christ. I always say, I've never abused drugs, but God saved me from a lot.
Oh, yes. Well, I've often said that Christ died to save gentlemen as well as rascals.
Oh, that's good.
No
That's a good way
man
of
can
putting
get
it.
by saying I'm a
Yes.
gentleman or
That's
I'm a
right.
lady in
That's
the strictest
right.
sense of the word. You need Christ,
That's
whoever you
right.
are. Now then, you and Eileen were working alone, two young ladies, and I say that in the highest sense of the word, to rehabilitate or to help in whatever way you could these young women of the prisons. But you had not made it into a full-fledged or full-time ministry at that time.
No.
How did that come about?
Well, it was my desire. I thank God because I came from a tremendous church, and so I want to make that very clear. My church preached leadership, being under someone. From the time I received Christ as my Savior, I was under, and I thank the Lord, and I got into the Church of God. I was Baptist. I went to Church of God, revival, loved the Church of God, joined the Church of God, and then I was under the Church of God. But ever since I was saved and under the Church of God, I felt that you need to be under someone, so that when we were going back and forth to the jails, we did have the blessings of our pastor.
Now that's E.D. Cobbs.
E.D. Cobbs. We had the blessings of him, and we kept him informed, but we did not have the blessings of the church. We had the blessings of him, but the congregation, we did not have their blessings. And our goal was always to get the blessings of the church. And I have said wherever I've gone that, and it's not because the Church of God is, I'm loyal to the Church of God, but that's what I'm in, and I'm loyal to the church. And so I feel that I need to be subject to that. So it was always a desire to get under the church and get the blessings of the church, so that everything that I did was always in an effort to do it in the church's name. And many times I would do it and I say, this is Church of God, and I was even embarrassed once. I did something, I said, I'm Church of God, and they called Cleveland and they said, we've never heard of her before. So I said, but I am, trust me, I am, because I was always wanting that covering of the church, and I've always wanted, I was telling my husband when we were driving to meet with you today, I told my husband, I said, I don't want to live and die and not touch my world. I just don't want to do that. I know I cannot do that alone. I need an organization to be able to leave something that can be carried on.
There has to be a vehicle
Yes.
through which you're able to do it.
Yes, and so I feel like the church is the vehicle that what efforts we're making now will carry on. I'm convinced that it's going to carry on.
Now, you had an outstanding pastor.
Yes.
Pastor Cobbs was one of the great preachers in the
Yes.
Church of God.
Yes.
I can still remember the sermon topics and the content of his messages
Yes.
when I have heard him preach.
Yes.
He is truly one of our outstanding ministers.
Yes.
And you had his blessing.
Yes.
You did not seek, or you were not refused the blessing of the church. It just didn't happen that way.
It just didn't happen that way, but I did not go alone. I did. He had a dream, actually. He had a dream, and God spoke to him in a dream and told him to help us.
No, that's wonderful. Now then, go ahead, Harold.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add the kind of fill a gap here from where Marion got to the ministry in the prison to Peniel is God had laid a burden on her heart and to work with folks with drugs and alcohol problems, and she eventually worked with the Teen Challenge Center. From there, she...
Now, was that Dave Wilkerson's?
That's, yeah, grew out of that ministry. And she worked with that ministry for a number of years, her and Arlene Bates, as a matter of fact. And then she kind of took a sabbatical from that type of work and went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where she worked with the commissioner's office.
Now, you were in Philadelphia.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
She was in Pittsburgh.
Right.
She moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to the Harrisburg area and worked for the State Correction Institution there in the commissioner's office. And the job that she had there allowed her to be able to see all of the correspondence coming from folks that had to do with the inmates, and went into the commissioner's office, and God began to deal with her heart there, and maybe she can pick up the story there.
And also...
Now, let us get a year in that. What year did you work in the commissioner's office?
Is it 78, 79?
Yeah, 78, 79,
All
around.
right.
But actually, Dr. Conn, two things happened. One of them was that I was working for the commissioner, and the commissioner, and I was seeing how they were treating the people who were coming through the prisons. They just really, it was a spiritual thing. It was a spiritual thing that God was dealing with me. I didn't feel that the people were getting help. I felt like they were brushing them on, and I was seeing how they were handling the mail and things like that. It's not critical. It's just the way. It was a big prison, but God touched my heart, and I saw that the people were not getting help. And of course, the one incident that I attribute partially to my actually leaving that job was the little Italian lady who came in, and her son was in solitary confinement, and her coat was buttoned wrong, and she was just a little Italian lady, and she spoke broken English, and she could not communicate what she was trying to say, and of course the people were kind of laughing and mocking her, and it just hurt. I even hate to talk about it. It just hurt me so bad that she was trying to say that her son was in solitary confinement, and she couldn't express that, and they were kind of mocking her for that, and so she went out the door, and I ran out to minister to her, and I began to tell her about the Lord and that God would help her, and that I would try to get her an appointment with the commissioner, and that I thought that I could do that, and I was able to do that, and I went in because he actually sent for me to work for him, and so I had a relationship somewhat with him, and I went in, I told him, I was all teary-eyed and everything, and I had never been that way. I had always prided myself because I was the only ethnic in the office, and I had one job that no other blacks had ever held, and I was making somewhat of history in that position, so I wanted to conduct myself in a certain way there. I felt the pressure of that, and so he had never seen me teary-eyed and that kind of thing, and I just said to him that this was a bad situation. Could he please see this lady? Would he please see her? And he said, yes, I will. And he helped her. He really did. He wrote a letter, and he found out what the problem was, and he really interceded for her. And God, that just touched my heart. And I felt like I thought, God, you have to put me in a position that I can help people that nobody else wants, that nobody else would help. I want to help them. And so that was the one thing. And then, of course, the other thing was that my brother had come back from Vietnam addicted to drugs. Our family, we were not rich, we were not poor, but we had never had a drug problem in our family. So we didn't know what to do. My mother did not know what to do. Now, my mother was a school guard. She was also going to get her RN. She's a nurse, but she was working as a school guard to supplement to her school. And I drove to take her for lunch one day, and there she was. It was raining like today. It was raining, and she had this yellow, I don't know if you've seen those yellow school guard things. Yeah. And my mom looked like a big duck. She had this big school guard outfit. She had this big hat on, and there she was. But her back was turned to me. So when she turned around, her face was washed. I thought it was the rain. But then I looked, she was crying. She was marching the kids, and she was weeping. And I said, Mama, what is it? And she said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And she was talking about my brother. She said, I don't know what to do. And so I promised the Lord, I said, God, I said in my car, I said, God, if you will help me, if you will train me, if you will teach me, I may not can help my mother, but there'll be mothers that you'll give me the grace to help. And that was the day that I made a commitment when I saw my mother.
That was actually the genesis of the ministry you now have.
That was it. When I saw my mother, and there was nothing that I could do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I said, God, if you will help me. I said, if you will help me. And Dr. Conn, I tell you this in the fear of the Lord, I have sat at my desk, and I've had the privilege to tell mothers again and again, don't cry. Don't you cry. God is going to help your son. I've been able to do that. Just like I asked God to help me to do that, I've been able to do that. God has brought that one prayer to fruition. And I've sat at my desk time after time, and I've said to mothers, don't you cry. Don't you cry. God's going to help him. So I don't mean to get emotional, but it's just something very dear to me. and how God has allowed me the privilege to see a vision, I mean, time after time, time after time. And I'm administrating now, but I will take the time to, if I see a mother and she's all upset, I say, put her through to me. Put her through to me, I'll talk to her. Because I know God has entrusted me with that. And so, and I can tell you that now my mother's moved down there, and she's having the privilege to see.
Is she living in Harrisburg now?
She's living in. We're in Somerset now.
Oh yeah.
And so she's living there, and she's our nurse. She's going to be our nurse. She's retired now, and she's Peniel's nurse. And so she's having the privilege now to actually touch other sons. So it's exciting for us, and we're glad about that.
Now, do you account that period as the birth time
Yes.
of Peniel?
Yes, sir, I do.
And was Harold in your life at that time?
No, Harold wasn't.
He
No,
still was not
I was
there.
coming, though.
Yeah, you're on your way, I know.
No, this was a few years before we met, and but the Lord had been working on me, where God used those two incidents in Marion's life to prepare her for this type of work, to birth this. We don't know why God allowed it to come to fruition through her, other than the fact that she was available and willing and made that commitment to God. But we had the same burden when we met. I was a part of the Teen Challenge Ministry, as I mentioned earlier.
You were a part of Teen Challenge also.
And I was working there.
But totally independent of her being a part of it.
Absolutely,
Yes.
totally independent. And her involvement happened a couple of years prior to mine. And I was saved, and I went through the Teen Challenge Ministry as a product, and I was there working on my way to Bible school. And we had, as a matter of fact, when I met Marion, and Marion had brought a young man into the Teen Challenge Center one day to refer him, and God used the incident, that confrontation there, to bring us together, and that was when we met. The Lord had been dealing with me about ministry, and the pastor that the minister that was pastoring the church that I was saved in felt that God had a calling on my life when I came in. And I've begun to feel that calling, and so I was preparing myself to go and to make myself ready and available for the ministry. And so I had that desire in my heart to do this type of work. When I met Marion, and we began to talk and began to share our vision and what we felt our purpose were for being on this earth, and we realized that they were not too different, that they were very, very similar. As a matter of fact, they were one and the same. And so when I was introduced to Peniel, God confirmed so much in me and spoke to my heart, and then at that point we merged our talents and abilities and our vision together, and we began to work together.
It is a beautiful.
I became a part of the Church of God. I married Marion, became a part of the Church of God ministry at that point, and also became a part of Peniel.
What a beautiful relationship you have. I've often admired you so much. I think that you're just a pair that God has put together for a very special purpose.
Well, we appreciate you saying that.
Now, Marion, Peniel, this is going to start as a very distinct ministry on its own. It had its antecedent in your prison ministry. It had its antecedent in the Teen Challenge and all. But it finally is going to come out of the loins of all of these influences to become a ministry in its own right. How did that happen?
Now we're at the Bureau of Corrections, and we're just a little bit past this episode with the little Italian lady. I was troubled. That thing troubled me. I just could not. Sometimes I wonder if she was an angel or what. She impressed me so much. Just her helplessness was just so. And so then I decided that I was going to hand in my resignation, and I did. I gave them a month's notice that I was going to be leaving within the month. I wanted to give them time, or whatever time they needed me to. I would stay till they got someone for my place. I wasn't just quitting, but I was telling them that I needed to leave. And I told them because God was calling me to do something, and I knew that was not they didn't understand that, but I felt God wanted me to make that statement, and I did. I said that the Lord was calling me to do something else. And so then, of course, my family, oh, that's a whole nother, they had all kinds of fits because, you know, I was not married, and I was, you know, and I was giving up a job. And of course, if you know anything about working for the state, you know all the benefits that go with the state. And of course, my family was concerned about that. And so my family tried to tell me, why don't I just get a house on Saturdays and just, if I had to do this thing, if I was just do it on the weekends. Don't. And I said, I can't do that. And I just gave up my job and everything. Not only that, I had a sick father. And my father was living with me. He was not able he was dependent on me. And so, you know, they just did not understand that. But I knew that I knew. But one thing they knew is that I was not just frivolously doing things. So they knew that it was something strange, although many of my family were not saved and they couldn't put it all together. But they trusted my judgment in it. And I gave up my job, and of course I was in another city as well. I was in the Harrisburg area, near the prison. My family was in Pittsburgh, which was like 4 hours away. And so that was all those factors were being mentioned. But I felt like God had called me, so then I quit my job, and then I went to my overseer, my state overseer. And well, before I quit, I went to the state overseer and I told him that.
Who was that? That
was Brother Brinson. It was Russell Brinson.
Russell Brinson.
And I went to him and I shared with him that I wanted to start a ministry. And so he said, okay. And I'm unsure if he knew I was serious, as serious as I was or whatever, but he said, we'll help you. So then I went out and I found this ranch in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania, which is on the outskirts of Harrisburg. It was ideal as far as I was concerned.
All you had until that time was the house that you were...
All I had was nothing. I had nothing. I had a dream, and that was all. But they wanted me to start a house. I didn't do that.
You did not start the
No,
house.
I wanted a big-time ministry.
Oh, I remember I was involved in this, yes.
I wanted a ministry. I wanted a place for them to come and live. So I found this ranch, and it was a summer ranch, and it had been sitting there for years and years, and so
on the
outskirts of Harrisburg, and it was called Dillsburg, and so I went and I found the man who owned it lived in Florida. So I called him. I got his number and I called him in Florida. Well, the guy flew all the way up to deal with me. Apparently, he thought I was a big-time
money
person. I don't know why he thought that, Dr. Conn. I don't know why. I didn't say I was, but I didn't say I wasn't. So anyway, he flew up to talk to me about this ranch. So, you know, we went through the ranch and we talked, and I had borrowed a friend of mine's car, which was a big Eldorado car, and I had borrowed this car. Now, I'm not saying God told me to do all this, but I wanted that property badly, and I didn't have any money. So I wanted him to look like, I had money even if I didn't have any money. So I had this big Cadillac, and I drove up and I met him. I made sure I was a little bit late so he could see my car. And I drove up in the big Cadillac, and I got out of the Cadillac. I had my secretary, her name is Becky, and she's been with me 15 years, and she still was there. And I told her not to speak a word, just to come. And so she came, and we drove up, and we got out of the Cadillac. And so I went up, and I had my best dress, the best dress I ever had. I had it on, and everything was just right. And I went, and I sat down with him, and I was very proper, and I began to discuss his property with him. And I began to tell him that I felt that I could take the property off his hands. And I felt that, and I had been, you know, I had visited the property, and it was sitting there, and of course I didn't know if it was going to be worth my while because vandals, you know, were coming in and out of the property. However, I would take it off his hands, and that was the thrust. And so he's like, yeah, I got this little dodo here. Let me just. I know, I can see he's like thinking, she doesn't know. So he said, oh, he's really talking, and I know he's thinking that I don't know where I'm coming from. I don't know this property is falling apart. I don't know this property has been sitting for 3 years. I don't know what I'm getting into. I understand he thinks that. And I'm just sitting there, you know, talking about this. So he says, fine, no problem. So then we got to talking the money part of it. After we started talking, you know, first we made a tour through the property. That was the first time I had ever been in. Well, I almost died. I thought I had died and went to heaven. I went in there. The kitchen was, everything was in the kitchen, everything. I went up in the dorms. All the beds were there. Everything was there. Everything I needed, because I had nothing. Every bit of equipment that I needed to start a program was there. He had locked it up in that place. I had thought I died and went to heaven. And my secretary was doing like this as we were walking, and I wouldn't let her talk. I just kept walking like I was, you know, being cool. I was cool the whole time. And so finally we sat down and we talked, and then he said, well, how you want to do this? And I said to him, well, actually, I don't have any money. And there was a dead silence. And I knew that if I waited it out, he would have to speak first. So I let him speak. He said, are you saying to me that I've come from Florida and you don't have any money? I says, no, but listen to this. I said, I have a deal for you that you're not going to be able to turn down. And so I began to tell him about how I showed him all the places where vandals had broken in. And I showed him that. And I said to him, what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to rent this property. I'm going to have people who are going to come in who are having drug problems, and we're going to fix this property up for you. We're going to do that. And I says, we're not going to even charge.
The property consisted of
it was,
one building?
No.
22 acres.
22 acres.
Had about 5 buildings. 2
dormitories. It had a kitchen, a dining. It was unbelievable.
It was indeed a property.
It was a property. God gave it to us. 22 acres, unbelievable. And so he said, he said, let me, he says, I have never seen anybody with that kind of nerve. He said, I don't even know how to take you. And he said, let me think about it and I'll call you back. And I says, okay, you call me back. I says, you call me back. And I just walked right out of there, got in my little Cadillac, which wasn't mine, and drove on off. And that next day he says, I'm going to let you have that property. He said, I'm going to let you have it. He says, you can do it. He says, for $500, can you raise $500? I said, I don't have it now, but I will. And he says, yeah, right. He says, I believe you will. And I says, I will. And then I got all my friends together. By that time, Arlene Bates and I were not working together anymore just because I was in another area. And so I called all my friends. I said, I need this money. And do you know, Dr. Conn, in 1 week, now this was a lot of money for back then, in 1 week we raised $7,000 in 1 week. The people were bringing bags of money in and pouring it on my table. I never saw so much money in my life.
Well, how did you get the word out?
I just called my friends. I called friends all over and I said, you got to help me. I've got to raise this money. I said, I have to raise $500. I told everyone I have to raise $500 plus I had to put a deposit, which was another $500. So I needed about $1,500 really. And then I had to turn utilities and all that on. And when they just, and I said, Friday is the deadline. He said, I'll give you to Friday. Well, he really didn't think I was going to raise it, I don't think. And that Thursday, the money was there, and the people were coming and pouring it in. They were bringing bags of money, pouring it on my table. And when we counted the money, it was $7,000. It was over $7,000. And I took it up to him, and I gave him the money. And he said,
he was still up there.
He was there. He was just staying. He was leaving that day, and I had
waiting that long.
And I had the money,
And
and
that's
that's how we started Peniel.
If Harold is a walking miracle, you are too. That was a lot of cheek to ask that, but yeah, that's what the Lord calls us to do. He calls on us to be adventurous and to do those things. And were they able to fix the property up?
We fixed the property up, and the guys we started getting guys in from everywhere. And what actually happened was we had so many guys, and they were fixing the property up so much. He had running water there that he had always had in the back of his heart.
At an underground spring.
Underground spring. Well. And he had already tested, and it was already licensed to have bottled water. So what he decided was that he was going to turn our guys into a workforce. And he wanted them to, instead of getting treatment, he wanted them to start bottling this water. And he and I disagreed on that. And so we finally I had to leave because he said if I didn't make the guys, I had the guys there, and if I didn't make them, he raised
commercial business,
that I couldn't stay. So I felt that that wasn't what God called us to do, and I was really sticking to the treatment for the guys, not to put them in a work program.
Yes, I understand. Well, now, when did you decide on the name Peniel?
We decided on the name before we got the property.
Even before this?
Even before this. My secretary, actually, we were playing with many, many names, and my secretary called me, and she said to me, Becky Geyer, she called and she says, what about Peniel? And I said, Peniel. And she says, it's in Genesis 32:30. And I said, well, let me read it and let me see. And then when I realized it was the place that Jacob had the confrontation with God, and I realized the guys were going to be coming and they were going to have a confrontation with God about their drugs and their alcohol and their lifestyle, and they were going to have to make a decision as to what they were going to do. But Jacob said, I've seen God face to face and my life has been preserved. And I thought, that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to actually have a confrontation with God. They're going to get their lives preserved because of this confrontation, and that's why we named it Peniel.
The Hebrew word Peniel, I've met God face to face. That's a beautiful name.
Yes.
And we, of course, Americanize it to Peniel.
Yes, sir.
That's wonderful. Well, your secretary was touched with a bit of inspiration.
Yes, she was.
And did you stay in Harrisburg after you moved from that particular property?
Yes, we moved from there, and then we moved to another site in York Springs. That's when the man that we were working, that relationship turned a little sour, and he really wanted us out of there. I mean, and really, I think he was not a Christian, and I really think he wanted to destroy the program. And so he gave us like a deadline to move, and we were really under the gun. We were really in it was very, very trying for us at that time. But our board got together, and we prayed. And one of the board members happened to be a real estate man, and he pointed to a property that was vacant, and we went through some negotiations, and we finally moved the center there. And we were there for about 3 or 4 years. And then the Lord moved us. The overseer, Brother Garland Griffiths, was our overseer in Pennsylvania, and he approached Harold and myself, and he told us that the campgrounds were just it was a stress for our church, and we did not have the manpower, nor did we have the finances to keep that property up there. So Brother Griffiths approached Harold and myself and asked us, would we consider moving Peniel on the campgrounds? That way,
that's in Somerset.
That's in Somerset, on our Church of God campgrounds. He asked, would we consider doing that? This would happen if we would do that. Our guys during their work periods could help the church keep the grounds up, and then we would have a place, because we were, we were not able to bring that place up to the standards, but we would have a place for Peniel.
You were bucking a lot of things in that heart of a big city like Harrisburg.
So we felt that was a good situation. So we moved Peniel to the campgrounds.
When did that happen?
Now, what year was that? That's 3 years ago. What was that?
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Actually,
I was
88.
there in 1986, and when I first began to meet some of the persons who were in Peniel. Of course, I'd met you earlier than that. And you've been in Somerset now from that time on. But now, Marion, you mentioned our guys. How did you get them? I mean, how does the word get out that do people go on the street? Do they encounter addicts, and do they encounter the down and out? Exactly, how did you reach out?
Dr. Conn, this is the greatest story that I could ever tell, because we have guys there and ladies. We have a ladies program as well. But we have residents there from every state almost in the United States. We really do. We have them from Georgia. We have them from Puerto Rico. We have people from Bahamas. We have people from France. We have people from Bermuda. We have them from Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Canada. It's amazing. With the budget that we have, it's amazing. Actually, God, I speak a lot. Harold speaks a lot. I honestly try to think sometimes, how how do these people know? We have people calling from everywhere, and I've asked them, how did you find out? Well, somebody told me. Someone was passing through, and someone told me, one of your graduates is in our church. One of your graduates has helped my cousin, and it's amazing.
Now that is where we are now. But right at the very beginning, all you have is a dream.
Right.
How do you immediately get the word out? Tell me how you
Yes.
really do start it from
Okay.
nothing.
What I did was I called all the penal institutions. And that's the only place I knew to start, was those who were incarcerated. So I called the probation officers. I didn't call the prisons, but I called the probation officers, and I asked them, I told them about our program, and I asked them, and I told them it was a Christian program, if they needed an alternative program to consider us. Well, what they did was they were looking for programs, viable programs that had some substance to it. And I knew what they needed because I worked in the jails. And so I knew what kind of programs that they needed. So I realized why God had me in the prisons, in the prison, working at the commissioner's office, because I was the one who worked with the halfway houses.
You knew how the system worked.
I knew how the system worked, and I also knew those that qualified and those that did not. And I knew why they did and why they did not. So that worked for me. And what they did was they had me to come to their staff meetings, and I made a presentation to their staff meetings. And I went to all the surroundings. I guess I made presentations to about 10 or 11 probation officers' staff meetings and gave them literature about our program. And then they just start trying us out. And the first one they tried out did not make it, and I thought, this is it. He was there for 15 minutes almost, and I say 15 minutes, but he wasn't there very long, and then he left, and I thought that was going to really spoil it. But they understood the element. They understood that people come and go. They were not even moved by him leaving, but they were impressed with our documentation, with our notification, with our program. They were impressed that we didn't keep him even though he was not getting anything together. They were impressed with how we dealt with him even though he left. They were impressed with how we dealt with the man. So that him leaving didn't shake their faith in us. It was how we dealt with the man while he was there, and why we didn't try to keep him there to make a statement when he was not getting anything together. So that was really, that worked for us. And after that, God started giving us people from the prisons. Then we started getting graduations, and the guys started to stand. Now our population for at least 3 or 4 years was 4 or 5 guys. That was our whole population.
That was it.
That was it.
In addition, though, to the communications with the penal system, also the churches.
Right.
One of the ways that Peniel has always been able to do public relations and keep the doors open, fundraising, that sort of thing, was to get meetings at local churches.
Right.
So in addition to calling the parole and probation offices, we also contacted local churches and made them aware. As a matter of fact, that was the first time I was made aware of Marion and the Peniel Ministries, was I was sitting in an Assemblies of God church one Wednesday night with our group from Teen Challenge, and the pastor came out and asked us for prayer for Marion and Peniel. So
She was not there at that time.
She was not there. She was just coming into the area, and then of course, you know, once the news got out, then it was just word of mouth. People began to share that there was another alternative, and that there was a church program being a program, a drug and alcohol program with a religious base coming into the area.
Now these are the Harrisburg days.
Harrisburg, yes.
And it was funny when we'd go to church. We'd be taking our program to church. And I'd be taking them on Wednesday night to the local church, Church of God. I would take them to church, and here we come with our program. 3 guys, that was our program. And we'd come in, and they'd say, "Here comes Peniel, and here comes
3 guys were the first graduation. Was 3 guys. Now,
First
of course, back in those days, we've had groups up to 15, 16 guys, and they would fluctuate and would go up and down. And of course, this type of treatment is very difficult. The classes start large, but then they kind of
I want to get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to get you two together. Now,
Okay.
how did follow it through from when you first heard of her?
Now, do you want his version or my version?
We'll get one of both.
Well, I didn't hear, I felt a desire to pray, and I didn't hear any more. It was 3 months before I finally met Marion. And as I mentioned earlier, I was working at Teen Challenge on there as staff at the time, and she came with a referral, a young man. Peniel works with men and women 18 years old and older. Teen Challenge takes them a little younger. So she had a fellow there, 16, 17 years old, that she brought in, and we met and began to talk, and I began to pray for her, and then we started having fellowship, and before I knew it, we were married.
And the spark was struck, wasn't it? Yeah.
The spark was
He
struck.
says I chased him till he caught me.
She chased me all over town for a while.
Oh, you're
No.
right.
I know.
I think it was the other way around.
Well, listen, I'm not just saying that. Please believe me, but I just admire you both so much that I just think you were made for each other, and
Thank
God
you.
had you headed in each other's direction all
I
the
believe
time.
so.
I
Yes.
believe that,
Absolutely.
and I think God placed this ministry on your hearts, and that you're doing what you were born on this earth to do.
I feel that.
Oh,
Now-
yes.
I think that, yes, and I admire it so much. But now, is what you do a kind of rescue mission work, or?
No, we're licensed. We are licensed with the state of Pennsylvania as a viable drug program. We are with all.
You are not just strictly soup and sermon
No,
type.
no. We are licensed.
Legitimate drug and alcohol residential treatment facility.
Yes,
a
we have-
long-term, 12 to 18 months program. Folks come in and from many different referrals, churches. The courts, for example, will give us people that have not been sentenced yet. Once they're sentenced, they will not give them to us. We can get them coming out on parole. We've sat in courtrooms with several people who testified on their behalf, and the courts then will give them to us if the judge have not gotten to the place where he's ready to
Will
sentence
they
them.
give you any hard case criminals?
We screen them ourselves.
Yeah.
We say whether we will take them or not. They apply. We don't just go and they give us. It's someone who has applied to the program. We go through a whole. We have an intake department of Peniel, and they must go through intake. And in that portion, they are evaluated.
Yeah.
And many times they're referred to another program, or they are referred. We have criteria that they must meet in order for us to get them in our program, so that by the time we go to court with them, they've gone through our whole intake process, and they are evaluated as to whether they are appropriate for our program.
In other words, whether they're really corrigible, whether you can actually
Well,
foresee
there's
success.
several things that we look for in addition to that. We do not take people who are severely that have mental problems. We do not take people like that because we're not qualified to deal with severe mental illness. We don't deal with those type. But we have a referral system. If we can't deal with them, we can refer
In
them.
other words, that'd take a psychological
Yes,
institution
yes,
of some kind.
something like that, where they would use.
Each person that comes to Peniel from the penal system must bring with them a psychological history, and that is part of the data that we review and also in talking to the probation officer, parole officer, their attorney, and we try to get as much information as we can, and then we sit down and make a decision on them. If the person is extremely violent, then a lot of times we're not able to work with them, but we reserve the right to interview each individual, and we treat each case as a separate case. And then we work very closely with the probation parole office, where we send them monthly reports. If the person is not doing their part to be rehabilitated, then we refer them back to the courts, and they oftentimes will lock them up.
Also, if they have severe physical problems, because our program is very strenuous. It's going all day, and so if they cannot keep up with the program, then we may not can can take them. But what happens is they will call the center and they'll talk to our intake department. They will take an application on the phone, or if it's from another state, they'll take an application on the phone. Preferably, we ask them to come in for an interview. So from that interview, we determine a lot of things.
This interview is with the potential
with a potential client.
Yes.
And we want to have it alone, not with their families, because many times their families will answer the questions for them. So we want to find out some pertinent data. Then the intake department will bring that case to case consultation. We have a case consultation every week, and they will bring she will bring the potential enrollees to case, and she will present their case to us in case consultation. And from that, these are the counselors and the directors of the program. We have a director of Phase 1, we have a director of Phase 2 and 3, and then we have the administrative assistant, and then I sit on that board as well. Harold does not sit on, Harold does more of pastoral counseling for the staff. He's there for the staff for stress and breakdown, and he counsels the families. I work with the program, so that I sit on that board and we hear the case, and she will tell us. We have a girl who's in charge, who is the director of that department, so she's the one who brings the cases, and she will tell us the situation and what's all going on, the finances of it, and she will tell us the whole case, what their problem is, what their background is, how many times they've been in prison, what they were in prison for. We only try to get 1 or 2 at the most who are dealing with homosexuality. We don't want a dorm full of people having that problem. However, we will deal with 1. If that one person has really we see a real outward change in them, and God has changed them, and they're on their way out, then we will take another homosexual. But we do not have, we have a quota of homosexual problems that we're dealing with in the dorm. So she'll give us all that data, and then we'll make a determination whether we can take that person at this time or whether we need to refer them. And many times it's not based on the fact that we cannot work with them. It may be based on we have our quota of that particular problem up in the dorm, and we don't want to. We don't want them traveling at night when
you
staff
have to take those that you feel competent in handling.
Yes.
And a lot of that is based on the staff availability. It's based on the physical structure of the facility at the time, and all those things will come out in these meetings that Marion referring to. Also, we are licensed as a non-hospital, non-medication facility, which means that we are not able to work with people because we don't have a medical staff. The state will not allow us to work with people who are heavily medicated. And but the program itself, as we've mentioned earlier, is 12 to 18 months in duration, and those last 6 months are usually aftercare follow-up. But it's a 3-phase program, which means that the person worked themselves through the program from
orientation.
The orientation. Then the next stage is called the Big Brother stage, where when a person comes in, the program is built. One of the principles that the program is built on, all these principles we take right out of the Bible. One of the principles is built on responsibility. Another thing we look for is initiative and a person being dependable, and we teach a person how to manage themselves, how to manage their time, how to manage their money, that sort of thing. And so we're looking to instill within the person a new value system based on the Judeo-Christian value system taken right out of the Bible. We teach them how to be, how purposes, for example, who is God, and what purpose does God play in this world, and who are you? Where do you come from? What are you doing here? Where are you going? Family is another area. We teach them to understand the purpose for family, because if the society we're living in today, the boundaries have been moved, and folks just don't, the whole idea of respect eldership and the whole idea of authority is just not there anymore. And so we teach them the basic principles of what does God say about family, and then society as a whole. And I've already mentioned money, but these are some of the practical things that we look for, and we start them from the time they come in the program. They are in need of help, and so what we say, okay, the only thing that you have to be concerned about at this point is to take care of you, okay? And they usually in that phase for the first 6 weeks of the program is really the orientation phase, and they learn the rules and the regulations of the program, and already they're beginning to learn how to get along, how to integrate with folks, and then they move from that phase into the big brother phase. So now from point zero, a person, they're not so much having to be responsible for anyone but themselves, but now they have to be responsible for one more person, a younger brother in the program. Already they're beginning to implement biblical principles into their lives. You have been comforted, now turn around and comfort someone else. Someone was responsible for you, now you turn around and be responsible for someone else. And then from there they move up to the third phase, which is the group leader phase, which now they may be responsible for a larger group. Say they may have to go out on a work detail, and they may have to be responsible for up to 5 persons, and then they have to report to the staff. And then of course the last phase is the senior group leader phase, and then again it's walking up the steps of responsibility. It's a discipleship kind of a situation, if you will, where they have an opportunity to learn it, to be given these principles, but now we have to put them in a position that they can implement them.
That's in addition to what we deal with the drugs. That's the practical side of it, but we deal with, and with us being licensed, it's mandatory and we don't have a problem with it, is dealing with why they use drugs. And so we get into the counseling aspect. He's dealt with the practical side of the program, but then we deal with the counseling areas, and we deal with why they use drugs, and we go back and we trace their drug history. We trace the very first time they used the drugs and what, you know, the circumstances around that, and we talk about the drug use, and we talk about we try to find out the root of their use of drugs, alcohol, and we many times we find out that I don't think there's ever a case that we don't have the stem back into the family unit. We have every client, in order to graduate, must have 3 family sessions. In other words, their family or whoever is significant in their lives must come in for 3 family sessions with us. And we have a case with their families, and we talk about some of the areas that have come out in the counseling and some of the problem areas, and we try to show the families their part in terms of how even there are times there's anger in the client, and we have those times with the family, and they're able to try to work through some of those issues that have happened having to do with family interaction. And so, and of course we deal with the people, the significant people in their lives that were not positive influences, trying to help them to gain a whole new set of friends and a whole new set of what are they going to do when they leave, that kind of a thing. We encourage relocation when they graduate the program, not necessarily in Somerset, and hopefully not in Somerset, but we want them to relocate in another area to give themselves a chance. If they go back to where they could find the drugs and where they knew all the druggies and all those who sold drugs, they're really not, it's really asking a lot. So we ask them to, even if it's on the other side of town, to just take their families and get a whole new start. We have also networked with, I don't know if you know Dr. Conn, but our board of directors and as well as our staff are not all Church of God. We have my secretary's Methodist, we have people from the Assemblies of God, we have some from Bible-believing churches and that. So we have a cross-section that serve Peniel. It is not all Church of God people who service Peniel. That helps us because we can network with so many churches, and we have done that. So many of our clients, what we want to happen is not what happened when I first started Peniel, which was bringing the people into the church and the people not really able to deal with them, and it's uncomfortable for the congregation, and it's certainly uncomfortable for the client. So what we've done as a result of that experience is we have networked with churches who have the burden, pastors and congregations who want to do something for that type of person, but they don't know how. We ask them to act as big brothers for our graduates. In other words, if a person graduates the program and he wants to relocate with his family, we have a list of churches. We say, well, where do you want to go? And he said, well, I'd like to go to Chicago. Okay, we have a pastor there in Chicago who says, not necessarily a Church of God pastor, but a good, strong church that believes in God. He says, you know, give me your graduates. I will put somebody in my church to be a big brother to him. We will help him get a job. He can be a part of our congregation. We will watch him. We will send you monthly reports for 6 months to tell you how he's doing. And he can integrate into a church that will love him. And so we have a list now, thank the Lord, of churches in many, many states, of pastors who are saying to us, if you have any clients that want to relocate in this area, we're here for them.
That over the years we've the whole idea of proselyting has always have come up from time to time, and I think the Peniel has demonstrated and proven to the church community as a whole over the years that we do not proselyte, that we work with Christian community. We work with people, and
You're working with all churches.
We're working with all churches, and we're interested in getting people born again and plugged into God's Spirit, that they then will be able to be productive in the community. And the church, the re-entry process, for example, after a person has gone through a time of treatment, is a very difficult period, very critical. And it is very important that we have folks who are outside the immediate boundaries of the treatment facility, these churches that Marion mentioned, and the other significant people in their lives, good, strong Christian people that can serve as models and mentors that will help the person kind of bridge the gap, you know, stepping out of the treatment facility, the residential setting, where they watch closely and where they get counsel and where they have classes and where they work and that sort of things, and to help them re-enter society and to help them be successful. Peniel has 80% success rate.
80%?
80% success rate of those who actually graduate the program. And we attribute a large part of that to the Christian community as a whole, to people that are able to take our graduates under their wing. And it has been proven and demonstrated that those individuals that have a big brother outside, or a big sister, or a mentor, like a pastor or a relative or some other significant person, are far more successful than a person who returns to society without that support, that obvious support. So it's very, very much.
And also, we want to decrease in their lives now. We have been in their lives.
You need to phase out.
Now we want to phase out because we want healthy people. We don't want them dependent on Peniel. We want them always to love Peniel, and we want them always to, you know, they're our publicity, so it's not to our advantage if they don't say that they received help from us, but we want to decrease in their lives. We don't want to have that that dominant role, so we decrease gradually from their lives so that they might have
gain an inner strength.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
Now, two things I'd like you to clarify. In your going to the penal systems, are the persons you seek entirely drug addicts or alcohol abusers?
No. We also say on our flyer, it says mild emotional problems.
Mild emotional.
Mild emotional problems. Now that's the person, when we say mild, we mean that's the person that is just having difficulty fitting, just knowing who they are, just knowing what what's this all about. We're not talking about severe emotional problems. We are very clear as to those people that we can treat. We feel so good about being a part. We're not the whole, and we are not the whole, but we have a part in this thing, and so we don't want to take what's not ours, and we don't want to deal with what we're not qualified to deal with, and so we want to work, and we have had. Strangely enough, and I know you want really facts on this, strangely enough, we've had more success with the secular world in terms of referrals and them referring to us and that type of thing. We'll have the secular world call us in a minute and say, I have a guy here, he wants a Christian program. We can't do it. They have no problem with that. They don't feel that that doesn't mean they're not doing their job. They understand that, but it seems
the secular institution or whatever would do it. Yes.
But the Christians, it seems like we're in this thing that if we say we cannot treat them, that means we don't have the Holy Spirit. We're not spiritual. We don't know
failed.
God or whatever. It means failure. And my thing that I'm trying to say, that's my little soapbox. That every one of us have a part. And if for a pastor to have a person in his church that is having a drug problem, he does not need to think that he's not a good pastor, that he doesn't know God, that he's not spiritual enough to touch them. He doesn't have to think that. He has a part. We have a part. He may want to send them to us, and we help them and send them back, because we're not going to pastor him. That's not our part. Our part is to help him and send him back. And so my goal is, if the church, we can work hand in hand, and the church can see us not as, to see us as a intricate part that has its place, and that we're not patted on the head. And sometimes I feel that. I feel like Peniel is not, that at this stage when we're taping this, that people don't really understand the significance of Peniel. They think, well, it's a nice little thing, and it's a little storefront, and they got little drug addicts up there, and you're helping them. And I don't think that they really see the significance and see the power and what God is doing, and that this is something that the church needs. I think every church of God ought to have a Peniel. I think wherever there is a church of God, and especially in this 1992, where drugs are running rampant, where we don't know what to do, where they are ripping through our society, where even some people some people who are having drug problems in their homes, and they don't even know it. Their children are using drugs, and they don't even know it.
Oh, yes.
So I think that we need a Peniel Ministries that's tapped into the spiritual, deeply integrated into the spiritual. The people, we believe in the sanctification, we believe in the baptism. We want them to have the baptism of the Holy Spirit before they leave, and we want them to have the old-fashioned down. I mean, when you come to Peniel, they're on the altar. We don't shake hands. We're on the altar saying, God set me free. We've never had a chapel service where the men are not laying out before God. These big old strong men crying, laying out before God. We still believe in the altar. We still believe in crying out to God. We still believe that there's no microwave. You've got to get down and get right. You and God have to have that confrontation. It may take a day. It may take 3 months. It may take 6 months. But you need a confrontation with God. And counseling is not going to do it. A good, clean dorm is not going to do it. Sanction from the church is not going to do it. It's that time at the altar. Our chapel services are vibrant. They are exciting. I mean, we praise God. We praise the Lord. We say hallelujah. I mean, we have chapel.
I can affirm that.
We do, and we want them to get in touch with God, and we want them to be excited about God. See, we're dealing with people that had something in their lives that excited them, so we have to replace that with something exciting, and Jesus is exciting.
Jesus is.
I think it's, before we go on, I think it's important, a couple of things. One is that we don't just work with folks out of the penal system exclusively.
Right.
We work with churches, we work with families, we work with other programs, alluded earlier to the fact that other secular programs refer people to us. And we We work with people that just walk in off the streets, and we work.
A father and a mother could.
Anyone just pick the phone up
somebody.
and call us and say, listen, you know, I have a family member, and so we work with those. The other thing is I wanted to
Can I
mention.
just say something about that one, just to kind of tap onto that penal thing? We only have about 5% that are from the prisons. That's one of the things we consider when our intake comes in the case consultation, because we don't want a prison mentality in the dorm.
Right.
So that when our intake supervisor comes into our case consultation, that's one of the things that we want to know. When she says, when we get his background, we say he's from the prison, the first thing they're going to say, how many do we have in the dorm now that are from the prisons? So if we have a lot, if we have our quota that are from the prisons, then we may skip him for now and take the next one on the list, because we don't want all inmates, ex-inmates. We want to balance there.
We work hard with the balance. Let me give you just a couple of things. One is that Peniel does have a treatment model that we had to, what the Lord has allowed us to do is to be able to take the principles out of the Bible and design it and give it to the regulators, the secular regulators, the government authorities, and they have bought it.
They bought it.
They have bought it, and the church, the work study, the counseling, these are all part of it. But the heart of it is the treatment model, and our main difference between the secular approach and our approach is the basic assumptions. For example, the secular society, the psychologists, etc., they believe that man, there's some good in man, and that man has been affected by his environment and that sort of thing, and there's some truth in that. But they believe that man can fix his own problems. What we say, and based on biblical principles, is that that is not so. That man was born with a depraved nature, and what we began to do is to work with that, to introduce a person to Christ who will give them the power to be regenerated through the power of the Holy Spirit, to make them a new creature, that they must be born again, not patched up or you know, to reform them, but to renew them. And so that's the main difference between us. They assume, the basic assumption is man is basically good, he just got his wrong track. With enough education, you can get him back. Well, we say, no, the man must be born again, and we need to have him regenerated and through the spiritual thing.
And also, also, I was going to say, also it is, the secular program says that drugs are your problem. We say the drugs are not your problem. It's just really, we talk about, we say that, and so he learned to put drugs does not become the important thing in his treatment. God helps us somehow to put drugs in with
all the other problems.
With all the other problems. And we don't give it any more clout than that. Although it is, and it has them bound, and we understand it's life controlling, we don't give it that clout at Peniel. We put it in with all the rest of the problems.
The rest of his problems.
Yes.
And now, let me ask you one thing. This, you mentioned a while ago that you have an active program, physical program, a very vigorous program.
Yes.
Lead me through. Here comes Joe.
Right.
He has a very serious heroin or cocaine problem, and he arrives in Peniel. Now walk me through through a day in the life of Joe. What are you going to do to him?
First, Joe will come in and he will go into our intake office. And our intake people, when he arrives on the property, he will arrive in our intake office. She will do the paperwork with him, and she will help him to do whatever paperwork that needs to be done to get him in the program. Joe will then be given a big brother, and his big brother will have been told what bed he's going to have, where he's going to have, and he will take him up, and he will get it. Joe will get his shower. He will get a shower with A200, and he will get, even though he may not have any problems, but he will get, this is a solution that we use for everyone, so that in case they have any problems, he will have to have his shower. So he has his shower. He will also be searched. so that all his clothes will be searched by two counselors in Joe's presence, so that he does not bring any contraband on our property, that he doesn't bring any drugs, just in case he doesn't bring any cigarettes. So we will search his clothes.
No cigarettes.
No cigarettes.
No cigarettes.
No cigarettes.
All right.
And he can't have cigarettes or drugs or any of that.
Or alcohol,
even
or
whiskey.
anything.
He can't even have a drink. And so we take all the contraband. Then Joe will be given a bed just for that day. Tomorrow, and then we just kind of get him settled in. And
He also receives a copy of rules and regulations.
He'll get a copy of the rules. He'll get that in intake. He'll get the copy of the rules and all the regulations and all that, which is he's going to be in shock from there. So we're going to give him a day to kind of get used to that. And then we will evaluate him during the night to see whether he needs medical help, whether he's starting any complaining. We don't say he's sick. We don't tell him he's sick. We don't tell him that. He has to tell us that. And so we just see, if he's sick, he'll say he's sick. We do work with the local hospitals, and then a counselor will go up to him tomorrow morning, and we'll ask him, "How are you? How you doing?" And he'll say, "I don't feel good. Usually when Joe comes in, he's had his last shot, so we can't tell he's going to be okay until tomorrow. He's rarely going to come in without having his last shot just before he comes into the program. So he'll be filled up. So we know that. So we're going to wait until it's starting to wear off to see how he's doing. After we find out how he's doing, then he'll be, then the counselor will go up and make a determination whether we need to get Joe into the hospital. Some guys have kicked drugs themselves and they don't want to go. They know how to do it. Others feel they need help, and so we kind of monitor him, and maybe we may need to send him to the hospital. He'll go to the hospital who works with us. They know us, and he'll be there probably for 5 days.
That's for detoxification.
For detoxification, and they'll detox him, and they'll work him through. We will be visiting him all that time, and because there he's able to smoke and everything he wants to do. So we're going to have to redo this whole thing when he comes back with the cigarettes and all of that while he's detoxing. While he's detoxing, he can do.
Excuse me, that's important because the secular programs, smoking is okay.
Is permitted, yeah.
And we are probably one of the very few programs, our type that is, that does not allow smoking. So even in the detoxification stage, we want him to plug into
that's
the
a
program.
part of the whole recovery.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
I know so many who transferred one addiction to another.
Right,
like that.
right. So then he'll come back, and then we'll give him a couple days from coming back after the 5 days to kind of get acclimated and all that. Although he'll have to go through the class, then he'll start the routine. He'll actually start the routine, which is he'll get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. He will make his bed and clean his area. He will have devotions. They have devotions in the rooms. Each room has their devotions. There is a captain of the room, and he will have his devotions. He will come down for breakfast at 7, and he will have breakfast with everyone, and then he will go back up into the dorm after they have breakfast. Some will be assigned to clean up, and others will be assigned to go up and get ready for class. He will then have class at 9. He'll have his classes start at 9. He will be in phase 1. He will be probably in the rough edges class, which is, it's like basically a very, very, very basic Bible class. It's not heavy. It's sort of telling who he is and what this program is about. Just a real basic class. He will also be in another class. He'll be in the rough edges class, and he will also be in the it's a basic survey of the Bible, just kind of knowing what the Bible's about. Just
Kind of an introduction.
Yeah, just a kind of introduction to the Bible. He's only going to have 2 classes now. Then he's going to be assigned a counselor. He'll go and meet his counselor. The counselor will talk to him and tell him who he is and tell him if he needs anything. He's there. He will have 3 sessions a week in his phase 1. He'll have his counseling schedule. He'll get his schedule of his counseling, his classes, and his work details. And then he will that afternoon he'll have lunch. Then that afternoon he'll go into his work detail. From that work detail, he will get called.
Work detail meaning what?
Well, he may be assigned the kitchen. He may be assigned in the vocational department, which is dealing with cars and cleanup. He may be assigned. It just depends on where he's assigned, and we get that from his resume that he gives us where we're going to assign him. We want to assign him to something that he's not good at.
That he's not
that
good
he's
at.
not good at. That's where we want to assign him. A place that he's going to have to need some help. Somebody's going to have to help him, and he's going to be a little uncomfortable there. That's what we want to assign him.
So that he won't hide.
So he won't hide into
If a guy
his
likes to work, for example, you don't want to, if you want to give him discipline, you wouldn't give him a work detail. We've had guys that just love to
Thrive
work,
on
they
work.
thrive on it. So what we would do, discipline is needed, we will restrict him from work.
You don't want him to
and he-
bury himself in
Right,
his work.
No,
absolutely.
no.
So if it's just mechanical. If he's
There's a
good,
strategy to that. And
Yeah.
I didn't know
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
there are people who follow that program of not letting you have
Yeah.
a job in where your strength is.
Right. No.
Right.
That's
There
what.
is a strategy. to
Yes.
that.
Eventually, we'll bring out his strengths, but right now we want him to depend on somebody. We want him to see his dependency. So what he's going to do, he's going to get in this position. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's uncomfortable. He has all these new people. His big brother is going to become very important to him because his big brother is going to work, and then he's going to start dialogue with him because he's uncomfortable. His big brother's already been there, so he knows he's uncomfortable. He has training as a big brother, so he knows how to make him comfortable, and pretty soon you'll find him integrating
Yeah.
in the system because
and
of his
the
dependence.
therapy comes in is that through him asking his big brother or his counselor questions for help, he's learning how to ask for help. He's
Yeah.
learning how to come out of himself.
Yeah.
He's learning how to depend on others. You know, God didn't make us an island. We need each other. And also he's learning how not to hide or to lie, to be deceitful about his problems. He's learning how to say, yes, I hurt. I don't know what I'm doing, or I need help, as opposed to escaping into the bottle, escaping into the bag of dope.
He has to
that
deal
sort
with
of
it
thing.
now.
Now he is out here. He's exposed, and now he's having to take a real, honest look at himself, and also understand that others are observing him also.
This process of making him become bare.
Right,
Yes.
So
right.
he can see himself. and
Absolutely.
nobody
Right.
else.
And then the chapel becomes very important to him because he's in an uncomfortable situation and he's seeing people receive solace at the in the chapel. So you'll find them going to the altar, and you'll find them crying out because they have no drugs, they have no alcohol, they have nothing.
They're in pain, probably.
They're in pain.
Some kind of pain.
They're in
Yes,
pain.
absolutely.
And so you'll
Yes.
find the altar becomes a friend to them. And they will go to the altar, and then at that altar there's so much love there. There's counselors there telling you, you're going to make it. I've been there before. You're going to make it. You're going to make it. You did so well today. You
All right,
did.
then you begin to bring in the singing that I've heard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that become an immediate part?
They
of,
just do that.
that-
Yeah.
We never taught
That's just
that.
spontaneous?
That's
Yeah, that's
spontaneous.
just
We've never
spontaneous.
taught that.
Yeah.
We have never taught that. We've never encouraged that. We've never.
That just happened.
They just do that.
Praise
And it's-
God.
it's
That's
the-
thrilling.
It's a natural response to God if a person been hurting and they really been down under, and we teach them that it is man, God is using man in your life, but we are an instrument, we are a tool. The real power comes from God. So as opposed to praising us, you praise God, and it's a way of an individual learning how to respond to an omnipotent, awesome
That is
presence
delivered
of a
them.
living God.
Hallelujah.
And they say,
Right.
you know, and they begin to, you know,
And we really are strong in our training. We have training sessions with our staff monthly. One of the things we are very, very strong, and we will even ask the staff to leave if they don't understand this, is that they must not take credit. They must point that person back to God. That may be why, you know, because sometimes they think, oh,
They're not
thank
doing
you.
it for their own glory.
Yeah, thank you. We say, no, it's God.
Yeah,
And
great.
oftentimes the singing and the praising is a result of their happiness of what
Yes,
God has
yes,
done for them.
yes.
All right, now then, you're using a hospital. You have all of this going on. How on earth do you fund it? We're talking about big money now.
Yeah, we are. We're talking about big bucks. We really are. We fund it by going out in meetings like we're here now. Everything that we do we do not permit our staff to moonlight, and they don't make a lot of
Is
money.
that right?
No,
It's a full-time job.
It has to be
Full-time?
full-time because many times when a person from Peniel comes and speaks or says something, people assume that money's going for treatment. They just assume when they give an offering that it's going to help for treatment. And so our people are missionaries, and they get supporters to help them. My secretary, her church, has paid her salary from the time she's been at Peniel.
Is that right?
For 15 years, her church, the Methodist Church, has paid
Oh,
her
that's
salary and lent her to us.
Well,
The church-
how do you pay the hospital?
Well, they get on public assistance, and they have medical cards, and so they can use their medical card for the hospital.
In other words, they can follow usual hospital routines.
Yes,
for
yes.
payment of
But
that.
they do receive public assistance, and so they can use their medical cards for that, and they will make them retroactive. If they're not on the public assistance, when they come in, and they probably are not, they will run it retroactive to when they came into the program.
Now, you're naturally hopeful, prayerful in your efforts to lead them to Jesus Christ. But it doesn't work. They just are resistant to that. They follow the therapy. They recover. They're rehabilitated.
Right.
But they do not accept Christ.
Well-
You don't boot them out or anything
Well,
like that?
we refer them.
You
We refer them because we make no bones about it that we do not consider a person totally recovered unless they have God.
Until they have come to Christ.
See, we have people, we have graduates and everything. We don't count them. Our cure rate would be even higher. But we do not. We have guys who've gone through the program and they are not using drugs today. And they are viable citizens, and they are contributing financially in terms of paying their taxes and those kinds of things, but they're not where they should be with God. So we say we have not succeeded there.
You do not count it a success
we don't
until
count that.
you've led them to Christ.
Until they have, that's what we call a success.
Yeah.
Praise
And if they
God.
say to us, if they say, I don't want Christ, then we say to them, and we're not upset with you about that, but that's what we have to give you here. But let me refer you. There's a program.
No
that you-
remonstrance.
No,
ridicule,
no. We're not
Not at
mad
all.
at them,
Not at
but
all.
we keep our stand in terms of we want them, we say, and we make no bones before they come in, we say for you to be a successful person that we can put up as a success, you have received Jesus Christ as your Savior, you have the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Now they may or may not have that the baptism, but we really push the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and that you have bought into the way of Jesus Christ. I mean, you believe with all your heart
All right.
that Jesus is your
But
answer.
if they don't, you have done a valuable service
planted a
to
seed.
community and
Yes.
to our day and to the person himself.
Right.
Absolutely.
You have ministered to the person.
That's right.
And his relationship with Christ is up to him.
That's right.
But your measure of your success definitely includes a reunion of the person.
Yes.
That the whole person is reunited, with
Yes.
himself.
Yes.
And that includes accepting Christ.
That's
Yes.
right.
Spirit,
Absolutely.
Spirit, soul, and body.
Yes.
And the non-Christian programs, they deal with body and soul. And we the rehabilitation of the mind and the reforming, that sort of thing, and the education process, but we go to the spirit.
Now, you mentioned, Marion, the ratio of success. When you do that, you're talking about all the way. You're recovered, you're restored to health, you're united with Christ. There's been an integration of the self with its maker. You're talking about all of it.
That's what we're
Yes.
talking about. That I cannot see. I personally, this is my feelings, and since I'm the founder, I get to say this. But I don't see that a person is prepared. I so believe in the new birth. I so believe that Jesus is the way. I so believe that with every atom of my being. I see them totally prepared if they know God. I see them knowing God. I'm not upset if they don't want Jesus. They will never get any feelings from us, but we will say to them, that's what we have to offer. But we've said that before they come.
Yeah, we said that on their way in the door.
But yeah, I have met so many people that want one thing, detox me, and I can make it on my
Right.
own. I can make it on my
What
own.
happens is it's very difficult for an individual to go 12 months at Peniel without accepting Christ.
It really is.
Now, because of
I
the
would think
structure
so.
of the program, it is possible for them to fool someone. We're not saying we're super spiritual and we can discern and look into each person's heart and tell whether they're born again. That's really God's job. But at the same time, I find it very difficult to believe that a person can go through all of the spiritual involvement there and to actually leave the program and graduate and really have not made a decision. But at least if they've done that, then we have done our job because we've made Christ, we've made the gospel available to them.
Relevant.
Another strong point of our program is the reason Marion mentioned moonlighting and that sort of thing, and you asked a question about the full-time situation, because we need mentors, we need models. You know, our staff just not there to counsel, they're just not there to teach a class, they're just not there to direct the work study or the culinary work that must be done there and that sort of thing, or to take them on their field trips, or to prepare them for their home visit and passes and that sort of thing, which they get after 6 months. But they're there to say, this is how a Christian, this is how a born-again believer lives. And we encourage the staff to bring their families, and they're able to be these models, and what my eyes see affects my heart. When they can see it, it makes a difference in their lives.
You know, that is the way Christianity started. And that is the way we just sent out a young missionary couple from Lee College lately into a totally non-Christian country. And the idea is, hey, you go there and show them the fruit of a Christian life.
It will
Let
work.
them see that. And when they see that, when they
makes
see
a
the
difference.
contrast, then it will have its work. Well, I just admire the work that you're doing so very much. One final question. I know Somerset,
Yes, sir.
and I know Harrisburg. How does the community accept your program?
Well,
Are they unsettled? Are they supportive? Do they embrace it? Or
I wouldn't say embrace. I think that's a strong word. But when we first moved there, we had heard we're for those who do not know what Somerset is like. It's a very small area. It is a white area. It is basically a white area. We of course have blacks and Spanish and whites and I mean we
do you
have
have any Asiatics? No?
yes we have
We've had.
yes and we have I think we have every
The whole across the
just
board.
across the board. And of course when we first moved in, they were very skeptical. But God gave us a plan, and that was to just keep a low profile. The youth camps came for 4 years, and that was what I think God used to speak to the community. There was not one incident. Not one incident. Our guys were there, and they had the youth camp. They had all the different sizes. They had not one incident from our guys. Our guys were very helpful to them. Our guys, really, I just want to say this real quickly. Brother Gene Rice, who is on our executive council, well, he was on our executive council.
Yeah, now with missions.
Now with missions. He was preaching camp meeting one year, and he did something that I think will speak to what I'm trying to say. He told our guys to disperse through the camp meeting. Now, you know, our camp meetings are like 1,000 or more people. He dispersed our guys throughout the whole camp meeting. Then he asked the people to find a Peniel guy, find out which one was a Peniel. Show, you know, stand up and say, this must be one. And do you know they could not find one Peniel guy?
Is that right?
They could not find it. They didn't know who Peniel guys were. And I think that speaks
Now,
to it.
does that speak of the response you received from the churches?
Yes.
You're well. I know here, and I know every place I go, we're rejoicing in what
Yes.
you're doing, and I cannot even imagine there's any skepticism really or anything like that.
Yes.
I want you to know that I commend it. I think it is doing the work of Jesus Christ. I think He came for this restoration of the whole person, and we're working in a hurting world,
Yes.
and God has raised you up for just such a time as this.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
I do
Conn.
thank you very, very much
Thank
for
you,
coming
Dr.
and taking
Conn.
so
We love
much
you,
of your-
Dr. Conn.
Well,
We
I
love
do
you. You
too.
are.
We love you.
We feel like
Thank
we're
you.
sitting with a legend.
Oh,
Amen.
you're very kind. Thank you so much. I've been visiting with Harold and Marion Spellman, she is the founder and he is the co-founder of Peniel Ministries in Somerset, Pennsylvania. Very dear friends, wonderful children of God. And I just feel honored to be with you today. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Conn.
Such a delight.
God bless you.
God
Thank you
bless
so much.
too.
We love you.
Love you too.